In the 19th century, global trade was defined by absolute geographic monopolies. If an empire had a highly valuable cash crop, they guarded its cultivation secrets with their militaries. Three resources were particularly heavily guarded. China held an iron grip on the world's tea supply. Brazil controlled the entirety of global rubber production, and South America possessed a strict monopoly on the cinchona tree, the only known source of quinine, a medicine critical for treating malaria. The British Empire viewed these regional strongholds as a barrier to its own expansion. Their strategy was blunt: extract living specimens of these highly guarded plants, smuggle them across borders, and cultivate them inside British colonial territories. Finding and uprooting these specimens was difficult enough, but the true obstacle was keeping the stolen assets alive long enough to reach their new destinations. Before the era of steam, intercontinental shipping meant a sailing voyage that could stretch for over 6 months. Any live plants lashed to the deck were exposed to extreme heat, pounded by highly corrosive salt spray, and entirely deprived of fresh water, which was strictly rationed for the crew. As this diagram illustrates, the reality of early plant transport was grim. Botanical collectors regularly reported that out of every 20 plants loaded onto a ship, 19 would wither and die before making it to port. With a 95% loss rate, the systematic theft of global agriculture was completely impossible. The British needed a way to isolate a living organism from the hostile environment of the open ocean. The solution arrived completely by accident, thousands of miles away from any ocean, in the coal-choked air of 1829 London. The smog and sulfuric acid of the city were so thick that keeping local garden plants alive was nearly impossible. A local physician and amateur naturalist named Nathaniel Bagshaw Ward was conducting an experiment with insects. He placed a moth chrysalis on some damp soil inside a glass jar and sealed the lid tight so he could observe the hatching process. A moment of wonder. He left the jar on his windowsill. 4 years later, the moth had failed to hatch, but Ward noticed something else. A tiny fern and a sprig of grass had sprouted from the soil, thriving inside the sealed glass, perfectly isolated from London's toxic air. By trapping the plant in an airtight environment, he had inadvertently built an impenetrable shield. As this cross-section shows, Ward had created a dynamic, self-sustaining microclimate. During the heat of the day, moisture from the damp soil evaporates and rises as water vapor. When the surrounding temperature drops, that vapor condenses on the cold glass, forming droplets that rain right back down into the earth. The plants could survive for months without ever needing a fresh watering. The transparent glass allows vital sunlight to reach the leaves, while the sealed exterior physically blocks deadly salt spray and extreme cold from ever touching the specimen. Ward scaled up his glass jar into a tightly glazed wooden box. In 1833, he filled 2 of these cases with British ferns and shipped them to Australia. The plants survived the months-long journey with 0 casualties, and Australian species sent back to England arrived in the exact same perfect condition. Without meaning to, the doctor had engineered an autonomous portable greenhouse. It was exactly the tool the British Empire needed to mobilize. The East India Company quickly adopted Ward's invention to execute their most ambitious operation yet, stealing the tea industry. In 1848, they hired Scottish botanist Robert Fortune to illegally infiltrate China's interior. Fortune disguised his identity by shaving his head, wearing a braided hair tail, and donning a traditional silk tunic to bypass local authorities and access the highly guarded tea regions. Working covertly, Fortune managed to extract roughly 20,000 live tea seedlings. He packed the delicate plants into Wardian cases, ensuring their survival on the treacherous sea voyage to British-controlled India. Those smuggled seedlings thrived in the Himalayan mountains, successfully launching the Indian tea industry and permanently destroying China's historic global monopoly on the crop. The Wardian case weaponized a single botanist, granting him the logistical capacity to destabilize an entire empire's economy. The British immediately replicated this tactic. In 1860, explorer Clemens Markham used Wardian cases to smuggle cinchona plants out of South America. This secured a reliable supply of quinine to treat malaria, clearing the way for further British colonial expansion into tropical regions. In 1876, Henry Wickham slipped 70,000 rubber seeds out of the Brazilian Amazon. Nurtured in London and shipped via Wardian cases to Ceylon and Malaya, these seeds birthed the booming Asian rubber industry, devastating the Brazilian economy in the process. But the very trait that made the Wardian case so powerful also made it incredibly dangerous. It was entirely too effective at keeping life alive. The untreated damp soil packed inside the cases harbored microscopic hitchhikers. Along with the cash crops, the cases secretly transported devastating pathogens, like coffee leaf rust to Africa, and invasive species like predatory flatworms, distributing them across oceans where they had no natural predators. By the 1920s, the severity of these ecological side effects became impossible to ignore. Strict international biosecurity laws were enacted to ban the movement of plants in untreated soil, and most of the remaining Wardian cases were gathered up and burned. By solving a simple shipping problem, a doctor's forgotten jar on a smoggy windowsill dictated the flow of global commerce and permanently rearranged the ecological balance of the modern world.